Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to have bearish articles being released for Palantir across the interwebs regarding the upcoming renewal of that Army contract, which is predicted to come in at A, a lower value, and B, at a shorter term. These have been deployed over the last 3 days across media outlooks and are still continuing to be deployed today. However, Cathie Wood swoops in and accumulates over 1.5 million shares of PLTR, adding it to her various ETFs. With consolidation and actually finishing slightly in the green today, Palantir is sitting at one of its most important critical support levels because it's right underneath its 50-day moving average. We're going to be talking about this. Hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm just collecting the data and dispatching it to you. Now, pop it up on the screen. What Palantir is sitting at right now is at a juicy 1722. Remember, recently, PLTR was able to establish that high at 2185 up here. What you see is this critical level of support right here, because if Palantir falls beneath this level of support at around the 17s, this large gap was created right after Q3 earnings were reported. And looking at trading volumes right now, sitting at Palantir's kind of typical average that we've seen in the previous few months at about 56 million. And if we quickly take a look at the options contracts right now, we actually have a flip. Yesterday, we saw a lot of put volume, but today we're seeing actually a decent amount of call volume that's actually outbeating the puts for expirations of tomorrow and for next week. The same story, as people are taking a bet on strike prices above 17 and having more implied volatility over the actual puts that we are seeing. Now, getting into the news right here, let's talk about Cathie Wood coming in here and snapping up over 1.5 million shares of Palantir following the stock tumble. And basically what we've had is Palantir falling nearly 15% as we've seen it close from 2027 on Wednesday here, going to 1713. So talking about that, what we do have is Cathie Wood's ARK Invest, which is basically an ETF that is looking into disruptive technologies, Palantir being one of them as one of the leading competitors, and people saying as a general basically bet in the AI industry. This flagship, ARK's flagship right here, was responsible for the bulk of the purchase, buying more than 1.2 million shares valued at more than 20 million. And now talking about that, the actual Palantir holding behind ARK Innovations is now at 7.7 million shares and is valued at 133 million, making up about 1.6% of the total fund. And interesting to see here, Palantir coming in on the dip and Cathie Wood coming in here and purchasing Palantir on that dip. And like I said, we still continue to go across the board talking about this Army contract renewal could ruffle some feathers. And remember, we have, of course, that analyst that had came out and basically saying, hey, we think there's a bearish outlook on Palantir, talking about concerns over the data ownership and also with the industry event that the Army might be looking into possibly competitors, looking at different vendors, and also going to be bringing in this Palantir contract at a lower revenue and also at a lower length of time. Now, however, these are all just predictions. They are not confirmed yet. There is still a lot to wait for that. So in terms of Palantir sitting on here, we see one analyst that really did a strong job at slipping the stock down, coming here from 21, coming back down here into the 17s. What we have seen is a general cool off in the AI bubble, and specifically right here at C3.ai, another big volatile AI stock coming at mixed earnings. You see this stock fall about 10% on the day, going from about 30 down to about 26. So even though in the global markets, what we have seen is actually a little bit of an increase right here in terms of the actual AI stocks, we're seeing still some uncertainty and also a lot of speculation about its possible future. Now, talking about that with this Palantir stock that has seemed to be drastic regarding its sell-off, and especially for those that may have just entered into this recent position right here, there could still trend lower before rebounding due to some different patterns. So specifically looking at those patterns for PLTR is looking at, and specifically looking at, where does Palantir comfortably trade? And looking here in the previous few months, basically here from September to November, Palantir does a good job that likes to sit in between the 14s and the 16s. So Palantir, if it loses the $17 level of support, could fall back into this area of consolidation, depending on how the actual emotion and also the momentum could change behind some of these AI stocks. Now, talking about that, and is it too late to buy Palantir? That really all depends on your outlook for the stock, specifically the AI industry, and what your long-term growth goal is, and basically how long you want to hold a speculative stock and even getting into the AI sphere like Palantir. Talking about this, for their actual revenue estimates for this next year, or for this year, actually the current fiscal year, is at 2.22 billion. Over the next few years here, it's predicted to be at 3.2 billion. So talking about that, Palantir does trade at a high multiple, and specifically at a high valuations right here. At its forward 1 year price to sales ratio is at 16.61. Basically corresponding and correlating this with the decelerating revenue growth that has been seen among some of these government contracts that are continuing to actually reduce the amount that they are spending. You're seeing Palantir that is starting to see a dip in its valuation right now as we speak. But in general, talking about that, Palantir is doing one thing that is holding it up against a lot of the bears out there, and that is with its AIP Boot Camp. Remember, Palantir has, of course, the AIP Boot Camp that these possible commercial clients can test for free, and basically they claim that they can give you a use case within 5 days. So the fact that we've seen in the recent quarter revenue outlooks that their commercial year-over-year growth is continuing to increase, and that commercial customer count in terms of revenue and actually just sheer numbers is continuing to increase. So with AIP Bootcamp is bringing a lot of diversification in terms of a clientele perspective to the table, and it's allowing Palantir to basically not be solely reliant on a single revenue source, which is the majority of its revenue source, government contracts. And which is why I think you see here, if analysts say one thing about Palantir, about the uncertain future of one specific contract, we see such this large price in its actual valuation, and we see its market cap that is highly volatile just because of a possible uncertainty, which this does give me a point to believe here that Palantir still has a decent amount of maturity to achieve in terms of a milestone. The first milestone that we really have seen, of course, is that profitability, and nonetheless the 4 quarters of that GAAP profitability, which brings the criteria for the S&P 500 inclusion. With that, you have its market share that as it increases, it will become more mature as it gets diversified with many different types of clients that allow a diversification in its revenue income. So other than that, Palantir will still be sitting on the sidelines here waiting. We'll see what happens tomorrow, and we're sitting at a really critical support level right now. So make sure everybody keeps a really close eye on Palantir. I'll catch you guys later. Have a great night. And of course, we'll make a video tomorrow coming into the weekend. Peace out.